We'll have questions after all of the three talks if there's any time left. Our next speaker, Ryuji Hiraoka, is assistant professor at the Prefectural University of Kumamoto. He is a specialist of Jesuit cosmology and its reception in early modern Japan. He recently published his first book based on his PhD dissertation entitled Early Jesuit Cosmology in Japan. Today his talk is Western Cosmology in Japan's Christian Century.
First of all, I'd like to thank for giving me this opportunity to speak about my research. Actually, today's topic is a part of my recently published book. The title is Textual Studies in Early Jesuit Cosmology in Japan. And my thanks goes to the organizer, Ken Nejime and Hiraoka and Derek. Yes, and it was during its Christian century that Japan first encountered Western cosmology via the Jesuit missionaries. The treatise De Spira on your left suggests that, on the sphere in English, suggests that the introduction took place in a rather systematic way. Historians have shown that it was composed in 1593 as a Japanese college textbook by Spanish Jesuit Pedro Gomez, who taught philosophy and theology in the Jesuit College of Coimbra, Portugal, before coming to Japan. It contains most of the basic ideas of 16th century cosmology, such as the geocentric system of the universe, Aristotle's four-element theory, and the explanation of meteorological phenomena. Previous studies, however, have not fully explored how such scientific ideas were interrelated with their evangelical activities, nor have they clarified their specific role in the overall mission program. Since the Jesuit principal goal was to propagate Christianity, it is natural to assume that there must have been not only a strong demand, but also a clear policy to conduct a systematic campaign. When we think of such a policy, particularly important are the references to divine design, which are present in the treatise on catechism but have received limited attention. The aim of this paper is to identify the place of Western cosmology in the overall mission plan of the Jesuits in the Japan's Christian century, especially in terms of the design argument. It is already well known that from the outset of Japan mission, Jesuit missionaries put cosmology in service of evangelization in two ways. One, to earn people's respect by showing the superiority of European learning, as Jorge said, I think from the example of Francis Xavier. And second, to discredit the Buddhist worldview and denounce the religion itself. For example, the annual report of the Jesuits of Japan of 1605 states, I quote, "Some Japanese people come out of curiosity to listen to novel things from our priests, especially mathematics, astrology," that includes astronomy, "and the secrets of nature. Once they listen to them, they get surprised and understand the ignorance of their Buddhist monks so much that they begin to deride the lies and nonsense that monks had claimed on similar subjects. They are so intelligent that they are fascinated by the way of demonstrations and the clarity that the priests made when explaining these things. Consequently, as long as the priests can make clear what they neither knew nor understood and tell them such truths about natural phenomena, they infer that the priests cannot fail to tell the truth about both death and salvation. Thus, in this way, many people are caught in the net of Christ." Unquote. This report eloquently tells how effective cosmological knowledge or instrumentation was thought to convert the Japanese, as well as the historical circumstances supporting the composition of Gomez's base file. However, Gomez's decision to compose the textbook had one clear intention: to demonstrate the existence of Christian God on a logical and rational ground. In the preface of this Bible, the screen, he says, I quote, as the apostle says, "These visible things, namely the machine of the world and the perpetual and immutable order of the heavens, demonstrate invisible attributes of God very clearly. Therefore, after having pursued that knowledge of God which can be acquired by faith, now we shall also give a brief account of the knowledge which can be attained through the creatures, that is, the nature, motion, and influence of the heavens, the four elements, and this inferior world. For with regard to them, the prophet specifically says, the heavens declare the glory of God." Unquote. As is shown here, Gomez's aim was to make the Japanese students, college students, reach the notion of invisible God through the knowledge of visible things in the world. Gomez's intention became clearer when we see that the Jesuits in Japan also produced numerous texts concerning the so-called design argument. This classical argument in European intellectual history infers from the intelligent order and creative beauty of the world that there is an intelligent designer or creator of the universe. The first example to be considered is the Catechism of the Catholic Faith, which was composed by the Jesuit visitador Alessandro Varignano, the practical leader of the Japan mission from 1573 to 1606. At the beginning of the treatise, in Book 1, Discourse 1, Varignano demonstrates the existence of God based on 7 sermons, and for which the second, third, fourth, and seventh adduce the orders of the visible world as evidence that God the Creator needs to exist, such as regular movement of stars and routine changes of seasons. In the third reason, for example, he uses the metaphor of a tiny house and says as follows, I quote, "The third reason is that we inherently acknowledge that there exists a master, a house master, when we see things are well ordered and prudently disposed in a house, of course. Therefore, when we enter a house and see each item arranged in an orderly fashion and other utensils are well distinguished and placed in proper order, we accept that there is someone who arranged all these things neatly. On the other hand, we see in this world the surprising order and harmony of all things, for the sun, moon, and the other constellations hold their movements and revolution invariably, and the earth, water, air, and all the other things stay in their proper place with one another. Therefore, it is evident that there exists the one who created all these things in good order and who not only recognizes all this, but also surpasses in soul and intelligence." If we focus on the logical structure of this reasoning, Varignano's argument can be divided into 4 steps. First, propose a tidy house metaphor, which can, second, indicate that every artificial thing has its maker, who is invisible, but by whose hand the visible order has been produced and held. And third, direct the reader's attention to the highest order and harmony shown in the natural world, such as the heavenly movements, and finally, fourth, conclude that it is the best evidence of the existence of God, the Creator, who is invisible but has highest and perfect intelligence. Here, Varignano only gives a brief mention to world's order and never addresses its details, but we can hardly suppose that this has nothing to do with the systematic introduction in Western cosmology. It is to be noted, moreover, that Gomez uses exactly the same argument as Varignano in his theology textbook composed with this Bible. And also, when it comes to the so-called Kiristanban, the Jesuit mission press in Japan, sorry, this is the right side. We also find frequent references to divine design especially in master of faith and guide to faith, which are both the partial translations of Introduction del Simbolo della Fe by Luz de Granada. The left hand is the Japanese partial translation, and on the right is the original Spanish edition. And this all shows that Variniano's arguments were recognized and adopted by his successors as well. Even more noteworthy is that such arguments were also utilized aggressively in the treatise of Kansai Habian, a Japanese Ilman brother of the society. This proves that they were put in the service of evangelization not only by European missionaries but also by their local assistants. Particularly important for our discussion is the following quotation from Deus Destroyed, an anti-Christian treatise that is a cover on the right and the main text on the left. An anti-Christian treatise that Fabian published after he withdrew from the society and apostatized. I quote, "There are 7 sermons that School of Deus, that is Jesuit, offers to novices. The outline of the first of them is to recognize the Creator from all creation and perceive the existence of the Lord from invariable change of the season. For example, if you see a palace, you will recognize the existence of skillful carpenter who constructed it. If you find in a house wall writing by which the household is well managed, you will know the existence of the housemaster. This is the way the world goes. Therefore, without the existence of Almighty Creator, we cannot explain that from empty time without being, heaven and the earth emerged, and that in heaven the sun, moon, and the stars shine brightly, while never failing the time and direction of setting or rising. And on the earth, there are so many grass and trees that never mistake the season of scattering flowers and fading leaves. They call such an important Lord Deus." Unquote. The above text corresponds to Variniano's third reason, as I quoted above. But what should be noted is that here Fabian clearly says that to recognize the Creator from all creation and perceive the existence of the Lord from invariable change of the seasons was placed at the first of the 7 sermons that School of Deus offers to novices. The first missionary to note the existence of these 7 sermons was Luis Flores, a Portuguese missionary, a Jesuit. In his letter to Francisco Perez and brothers in China, dated 6 March 1565, they can be summarized in these 7 topics. 1. God's existence and the immortality of the soul, refuting Japanese sects, creation, original sin, etc., and Advent, the Ascension, the Last Judgment, and so on. Eventually, this working method was approved by Variniano as general policy of the Church in Japan. In his summary report of 1583 concerning the Japan mission, he provides the following description, I quote, "The way we take when converting Japanese people is to explain catechism sufficiently. It is all declared in 7 sermons, that is to show them the mistakes and falsehood of their sects of Japanese religion, and that there is only one God who gives reward and punishment to the human soul, as well as to prove that the soul is immortal. Then to explain the coming of our Lord, the Savior, Jesus Christ, and other important matters of our Holy Rosary. Those who became Christians with these early sermons would depart from the persistence in their idols and conclude that their sects are false." Unquote. It is highly probable that this 7-phase scheme, which starts with the existence of God and the immortality of the soul, eventually led Gomez to compose textbooks corresponding to each topic for his compendium. One is the De Spira, and the other is De Anima, which discusses Aristotelian philosophy on the soul. Or at least This method cannot have been unrelated to the fact that God's existence is always put in advance of all the other doctrines in Valinian's Catechism of the Catholic Faith, as I shown above, and Japanese versions of Luis de Granada's Master of Faith and Guide to Faith. Since all Christian teachings are based on a foundation of God, it must have been natural from the viewpoint of step-by-step instruction to prove the existence on a firm ground before all else. Figure 1 shows the overall conversion program as reconstructed from the above materials. When viewed from this scheme, the aggressive employment of cosmology at the preliminary stage of propagation is understandable as a device to arouse the spiritual demand on left down, which is potentially hidden among the Japanese people who visited the priests out of curiosity to learn the secret of nature, as I shown. Then to introduce people to the Christian God organically, while the combination of cosmology and design argument followed by the gradual doctrines was to duly furnish the spiritual supply for that demand. Western cosmology must have been the very powerful spiritual weapon for the Jesuits in Japan, as this method was already showcased in the annual report of 1605 as the Death of Christ. Without the concept of cosmology as spiritual weapon or spiritual tool, it is hard to grasp the real point of the reports from or the treatise of the Japan Jesuits. Indeed, cosmology and design argument are like two wheels of a cart to demonstrate the existence of God to the Japanese. This strategy, a distinctive characteristic of the Jesuit mission in Japan's Christian century, may also shed new light on the relationship between science and religion in early modern Europe, as well as their transmission to other regions of the globe. Thank you.